What if the people you are afraid to lose are the same people teaching you how dangerous it is to need anyone too much? The truth is, the moment another person becomes responsible for your happiness, your peace is no longer fully yours. You start accepting what should make you leave, chasing what should come naturally, and fearing loneliness more than losing yourself. But what happens when you finally learn to stand alone? What happens when you stop begging people to stay and become strong enough to survive when they leave? This is the brutal truth about needing people. And once you understand it, you may never depend on anyone the same way again. 1. Needing people makes you accept what you should walk away from. The more desperately you need someone, the more likely you are to tolerate what should have made you leave. This is how emotional dependence quietly destroys self-respect. At first, you notice the disrespect, the inconsistency, the silence, the excuses, and the way your needs are always pushed aside. But instead of walking away, you begin explaining their behavior for them. You tell yourself they are stressed, confused, busy, or afraid, because the truth feels more painful. They may simply know you will stay no matter how little they give. When losing someone feels unbearable, you start lowering your standards just to keep them. You accept less attention, less effort, less honesty, and less love, while convincing yourself that patience will eventually change everything. But patience without boundaries can become permission for someone to keep hurting you. The brutal truth is that fear of being alone can make you remain loyal to situations that are slowly breaking you. You stop asking, "Is this good for me?" and start asking, "How do I keep them from leaving?" That is the moment you begin abandoning yourself. Real strength begins when you understand that losing someone is painful, but losing your dignity to keep them is far worse. 2. Attachment can make pain feel like love. Attachment can confuse you so deeply that you begin calling suffering love. You start believing that missing someone means they are meant for you, that constantly thinking about them proves the connection is special, and that the pain of losing them must mean the relationship was valuable. But pain is not always proof of love. Sometimes it is proof that you became emotionally dependent on a person who could never give you the security you needed. You may spend months waiting for their attention, analyzing their silence, forgiving the same behavior, and holding on to memories while ignoring what is happening in the present. The more attached you become, the harder it is to see the relationship clearly, because your fear of losing them begins speaking louder than the truth in front of you. You stop asking whether they treat you well and start asking whether they will stay. You confuse anxiety with passion, inconsistency with mystery, and emotional exhaustion with deep connection. Real love should not make you lose yourself just to keep someone close. The moment you must sacrifice your peace, dignity, and identity to maintain a connection, you are no longer protecting love. You are protecting an attachment that is hurting you. Learning to let go does not mean the feelings were fake. It means you finally understand that loving someone should never require abandoning yourself. 3. The person who controls your happiness controls you. The moment another person becomes responsible for your happiness, they gain a level of control over you that you may not even notice. Their message can make your whole day feel beautiful, while their silence can make everything feel empty. Their attention lifts you, their distance destroys you, and their approval becomes the proof you use to decide whether you are worthy. This is how emotional dependence quietly turns into emotional captivity. You stop living from your own center and begin reacting to someone else's behavior. If they are warm, you feel secure. If they pull away, you panic. If they choose you, you feel valuable. If they ignore you, you begin questioning yourself. No person should have that much authority over your inner world. People change, moods change, relationships change, and sometimes even the people who once promised to stay will leave. Your peace must be built on something stronger than another person's consistency. Create a life with purpose, discipline, goals, interests, and a sense of identity that exists even when nobody is giving you attention. The goal is not to stop caring. The goal is to stop collapsing. Love people, enjoy their presence, appreciate what they bring into your life, but never hand them the power to decide whether your life feels worth living. The day your happiness stops depending on someone else's behavior is the day you begin taking your freedom back. 4. Loneliness becomes power when you stop running from it. Most people are not afraid of being alone. They are afraid of what they might feel when there is nobody left to distract them. That is why they keep reaching for people, conversations, messages, relationships, and constant noise. Silence feels uncomfortable because silence removes the escape. When nobody is calling, nobody is texting, and nobody is there to make you feel wanted, you are forced to sit with yourself. For many people, that is the most difficult place to be. They would rather remain connected to someone who drains them than face the emptiness they feel when that person is gone. This is how loneliness becomes dangerous. Not because being alone is unbearable, but because the fear of being alone can make you accept almost anything. You may stay in relationships that have already lost their warmth. You may keep friendships that leave you feeling small. You may chase people who respond only when it is convenient for them. You may tolerate disrespect, mixed signals, broken promises, emotional distance, and endless disappointment simply because the thought of having no one feels worse than the pain of having the wrong person. But there comes a moment when you must ask yourself a difficult question. How much pain have you accepted just to avoid being alone? Sometimes the person you are afraid to lose is already making you feel lonely. Sometimes you sit beside someone and still feel unseen. Sometimes you are surrounded by people and still feel like nobody truly knows you. That is one of the hardest truths to accept. Physical presence does not always create emotional connection. A crowded room can feel emptier than a quiet home when the people around you do not understand, respect, or value you. This is why learning to be alone is not a punishment. It is a skill. At first, solitude may feel strange. The silence may feel heavier than you expected. Your mind may start replaying conversations, memories, mistakes, and people you thought you had forgotten. You may feel the urge to reach out to someone you know is not good for you simply because you want relief from the discomfort. But this is the point where most people run back to what was hurting them. They mistake temporary loneliness for proof that leaving was a mistake. Do not confuse discomfort with danger. When you first begin spending time alone, you are not necessarily suffering because you need that person back. You may be suffering because your mind became accustomed to their presence, their attention, their messages, or even the emotional chaos they brought into your life. Your nervous system may have become used to waiting, hoping, worrying, and reacting. When that cycle stops, peace can initially feel unfamiliar. This is important to understand because many people return to unhealthy situations not because they truly miss the person, but because they miss the pattern. They miss having someone to think about. They miss checking the phone. They miss the emotional highs and lows. They miss the feeling of waiting for something to happen. And when all of that disappears, silence feels empty. But silence is not empty. Silence is where you begin hearing yourself again. When you stop constantly reacting to another person, you begin noticing your own thoughts. You remember what you actually enjoy. You rediscover interests you abandoned. You start noticing how much energy you were spending trying to be understood, accepted, chosen, or loved by someone else. You begin realizing how much of your life was built around another person's moods, availability, and decisions. That realization can be painful, but it is also powerful. Because once you see how much of yourself you gave away, you can begin taking it back. Solitude teaches you things that constant company never can. It teaches you whether you actually know yourself or only know who you become around other people. It reveals whether your happiness has an internal foundation or whether it depends entirely on being noticed. It shows you whether you can create meaning without an audience. At first, being alone may feel like nobody chose you. Later, it can begin to feel like you finally chose yourself. That shift changes everything. You stop seeing an empty evening as rejection. You stop treating silence like proof that something is wrong. You stop believing that your life has less value because nobody is watching it. You learn to enjoy simple moments without needing to share them immediately. You eat alone without feeling embarrassed. You walk alone without feeling incomplete. You work on yourself without needing applause. You begin discovering that peace is not always loud and happiness does not always need witnesses. This is the beginning of emotional independence. The person who cannot tolerate loneliness will always be vulnerable to manipulation. Anyone can control them by threatening to leave. Anyone can make them beg by becoming distant. Anyone can make them compromise their standards by offering temporary attention. But when you know how to stand alone, that power disappears. You no longer panic when someone pulls away. You no longer chase the moment they become distant. You no longer destroy your dignity trying to keep someone who is already choosing to leave. You can care deeply and still say, "I will not abandon myself to keep you." That is strength. Being comfortable alone does not mean you stop loving people. It does not mean you become cold, antisocial, or emotionally closed. In fact, it can make your relationships healthier because you stop choosing people from desperation. When you are terrified of loneliness, you may choose almost anyone. When you are comfortable alone, you become more careful. You stop asking, "Who will stay with me?" You begin asking, "Who deserves access to my life?" That is a completely different question. Loneliness can teach you standards. It can teach you patience. It can teach you how to stop rushing into connections simply because you are tired of your own company. It can teach you that a temporary empty space is better than filling your life with people who make you feel empty anyway. And most importantly, it teaches you that being alone and being abandoned are not the same thing. Abandonment says, "Nobody wants me." Solitude says, "I am still here." That distinction matters. You are still here, even after someone left, even after a friendship ended, even after you were forgotten by someone you could not forget, even after the person you thought you needed continued living without you. You are still here. And sometimes that is the beginning of your greatest transformation, because when the person you depended on disappears, you finally discover what is left. Your mind is still here. Your body is still here. Your future is still here. Your ability to rebuild is still here. The life you thought was over may simply be waiting for you to return to it. You do not overcome loneliness by finding people as quickly as possible. You overcome it by building a relationship with yourself that does not collapse when nobody else is present. Learn how to spend time with yourself without constantly trying to escape. Learn how to sit in silence without immediately reaching for your phone. Learn how to do things simply because they make you feel alive. Build routines that belong to you. Create goals that do not depend on anyone else. Take care of your body. Strengthen your mind. Read, walk, create, work, rest, think. Become curious about who you are when nobody is influencing you. The more you build a life of your own, the less frightening loneliness becomes. Eventually, you begin to understand something most people never discover. Being alone can be peaceful when you are no longer at war with yourself. And once solitude becomes peaceful, you stop begging the wrong people to stay. You stop calling unavailable people just because you feel empty. You stop returning to places that damaged you simply because they are familiar. You stop mistaking company for connection. You stop sacrificing your future for temporary relief from loneliness. This is where loneliness becomes power, because once you are no longer afraid of your own company, people cannot threaten you with their absence. They can leave, and you will feel it. You may miss them. You may grieve. You may remember. You may have difficult days, but you will not disappear with them. You will not stop living because they stop choosing you. You will not destroy your dignity trying to force them back. You will understand that losing someone can hurt without becoming the end of your life. This is the strength most emotionally dependent people are searching for, not the ability to stop caring. The ability to survive caring, not the ability to never feel lonely. The ability to move through loneliness without running back to what broke you, not the ability to need absolutely nobody. The ability to know that your life still has value even when nobody is standing beside you. One day you may look back at the season you feared most and realize it gave you something no person ever could. It taught you that you can stand. It taught you that silence will not destroy you. It taught you that an empty room can become a place of healing. It taught you that your own presence can become enough to carry you through difficult nights. And once you learn that, something changes permanently. You begin choosing people because you want them, not because you need them to save you from yourself. You stop clinging, you stop forcing, you stop begging, you stop treating every goodbye like the end of your identity. You begin to understand that some people are meant to walk with you for a season, not own your entire future. Let them come. Let them stay if they choose to stay with honesty and respect. Let them go if they choose another path. But never leave yourself just because someone else did. That is the lesson loneliness was trying to teach you all along. The moment you stop running from being alone stops controlling you, and the person who can stand alone without feeling broken becomes much harder for the world to break. 5. Stop chasing people who are comfortable without you. One of the most painful things you can realize is that while you were fighting to keep someone close, they were perfectly comfortable with the distance. You were checking your phone, replaying conversations, wondering what went wrong, trying to find the right words, the right timing, the right version of yourself that might finally make them care the way you cared. Meanwhile, they were living their life. That truth can hurt because it forces you to see something you may have spent months avoiding. You cannot make someone value what they are willing to lose. Chasing people begins quietly. At first, it looks like effort. You send the first message because you care. You make the first call because you do not want pride to destroy something meaningful. You forgive because everyone makes mistakes. There is nothing wrong with effort when effort is mutual. The problem begins when you become the only person keeping the connection alive. You are always reaching out, always fixing the distance, always explaining, always waiting, always creating reasons for why they cannot give you what you continuously give them. Eventually, you stop participating in a relationship and start carrying it. You become responsible for every conversation, every reconciliation, every plan, every attempt to keep things from falling apart. And because you care, you tell yourself that giving more will somehow inspire them to give more too. You believe that if you are patient enough, loving enough, available enough, understanding enough, they will finally recognize your value. But people do not always value you because of how much you give. Sometimes they simply become accustomed to receiving it. That is a difficult truth to accept. The more consistently you chase someone who gives very little back, the more you may teach them that they do not need to make an effort. Why would they worry about losing you when you have already shown them that you will return after every silence? Why would they fear disappointing you when they know you will eventually explain their behavior for them? Why would they learn to meet you halfway when you keep walking the entire distance? This is not about playing games. It is not about pretending not to care. It is not about ignoring people to make them chase you. It is about understanding that genuine connection should not require one person to constantly prove that the relationship deserves to exist. There is a difference between fighting for someone and fighting against their lack of interest. There is a difference between patience and self-abandonment. There is a difference between giving someone time and giving away years of your life waiting for them to become a person they have never shown any desire to become. You have to learn that difference, because the longer you chase someone who is comfortable without you, the more you begin to lose respect for yourself. You start doing things you never thought you would do. You send another message after being ignored. You apologize for things that were not your fault, just to end the silence. You accept weak excuses because the truth feels too painful. You pretend their inconsistency does not hurt you. You celebrate tiny amounts of attention because you have been deprived of it for so long. And gradually, your standards begin to shrink. What once would have felt unacceptable starts feeling normal. What once would have made you walk away now becomes something you tolerate because the thought of losing them feels worse. This is how chasing changes you. It does not only exhaust your energy, it distorts your judgment. You start measuring love by how much pain you are willing to survive instead of how much peace the connection brings into your life. You begin believing that the struggle itself proves the relationship is meaningful. But struggle does not always mean something is worth saving. Sometimes struggle simply means you are refusing to accept what has already become clear. Someone who wants to be in your life will not make you spend every day questioning whether you matter. They may be imperfect. They may become busy. They may need space. They may not always express themselves perfectly. But there is a difference between an imperfect person and an indifferent one. An imperfect person can still show effort. An indifferent person keeps making you search for it. You should not have to become a detective to find proof that someone cares. You should not have to study every message, every pause, every change in tone, every delay in response, trying to understand whether you are still important to them. When a relationship constantly makes you feel uncertain, your mind becomes trapped in a cycle. You receive a little attention and feel relieved. They pull away and you panic. They return and you feel chosen again. Then they become distant and you start chasing. This cycle can become addictive because the inconsistency makes every small moment of affection feel more powerful than it actually is. You begin craving relief instead of receiving love, and because the relief feels so good, you confuse it with connection. This is why letting go can feel harder than the relationship itself. You are not only letting go of the person, you are letting go of the hope that one day they will finally become who you needed them to be. You are letting go of the version of the future you created in your mind. You are letting go of the belief that all your effort will eventually be rewarded, and sometimes that hope is harder to release than the person. But there comes a point when hope becomes expensive, when hope costs your peace, when hope keeps you waiting in a place where nothing is changing, when hope makes you ignore reality because reality does not match what you wanted. At that point, letting go is no longer giving up. It is waking up. You have to ask yourself one honest question. If I stopped chasing, would this connection still exist? That question can reveal everything. If you stopped sending the first message, would they reach out? If you stopped fixing every misunderstanding, would they try to repair anything? If you stopped making excuses for their behavior, what would the truth look like? If you stopped giving all the effort, would there be anything left? You may not like the answer, but clarity is better than endless confusion. Sometimes the only reason a connection continues is because one person refuses to let it end. That is not the same as being chosen. You deserve to know the difference. Stop trying to earn a place in someone's life that they should freely want to give you. Stop performing for affection. Stop believing that if you become more attractive, more patient, more useful, more successful, more understanding, or less demanding, someone will finally decide you are enough. Your worth is not created by another person's ability to recognize it. Some people will lose something valuable and still fail to understand what they lost. That does not reduce the value of what they had. It only reveals the limits of what they were capable of appreciating. You do not need to prove your worth to someone who benefits from pretending not to see it. The more you chase them, the more you may accidentally reinforce the idea that they are the prize and you are the one trying to qualify. That imbalance destroys your confidence. You begin looking upward at someone who may not even be giving you the bare minimum. You start treating their attention like something rare and precious, while treating your own devotion as if it has no value. But your time has value. Your loyalty has value. Your emotional energy has value. Your presence has value. The hours you spend worrying about someone are hours of your life you will never get back. The energy you spend chasing could have been used to build your future, strengthen your mind, improve your life, deepen healthy relationships, or become someone you are proud to be. Every time you chase a person who keeps running, you are also running away from yourself. You are postponing your own growth because all your attention is trapped in someone else's behavior. You are waiting for a message when you could be building a life. You are waiting for an apology when you could be healing. You are waiting for them to choose you when you could finally choose yourself. This is why stopping the chase is not an act of anger. It is an act of return. You return your energy to yourself. You return your time to yourself. You return your dignity to yourself. You stop standing outside emotional doors that someone keeps refusing to open. You stop knocking. You stop begging. You stop trying to convince people that your presence should matter. And you begin paying attention to the people and opportunities that do not require you to prove you deserve a place. At first, Stopping may feel painful. You may reach for your phone out of habit. You may want to send one final message. You may convince yourself that perhaps they are waiting for you to make the first move again. You may feel guilty for pulling back. You may worry that if you stop trying, the relationship will disappear completely. But remember this: if the only thing keeping someone in your life is your constant effort, then you were never holding a relationship together. You were delaying its ending. Let silence reveal what chasing has been hiding. Step back, not to punish them, not to manipulate them, not to make them miss you. Step back so you can see the truth. When you stop filling every empty space, you finally discover whether the other person was ever willing to meet you there. Some people will notice your absence and make an effort. Others will continue exactly as before. Both outcomes give you valuable information. Do not be afraid of information that protects you. People often fear stepping back because they are afraid of being forgotten. But ask yourself this: do you really want to be remembered only because you constantly remind someone that you exist? Real connection does not need endless begging to stay alive. A person who genuinely values you may not be perfect, but they will not consistently make you feel invisible. You should not have to chase what is meant to walk beside you. That does not mean everyone who leaves is evil. Sometimes people grow apart. Sometimes feelings change. Sometimes priorities shift. Sometimes two people simply stop fitting into each other's lives. The mature response is not always to fight harder. Sometimes maturity is recognizing when something has ended and refusing to destroy yourself trying to resurrect it. Not every goodbye is a failure. Some goodbyes save years. Some endings protect you from becoming a smaller version of yourself. Some people must leave before you finally realize how much of your identity you built around being wanted by them. And when they are gone, you begin the difficult but powerful work of rebuilding that identity. You start asking new questions. What do I want? What kind of life am I building? What standards did I abandon? What parts of myself did I neglect while I was busy trying to be enough for someone else? These questions return you to yourself. That is the real power of letting people go. You stop organizing your life around someone else's willingness to stay. You stop trying to control the uncontrollable. You cannot control who chooses you. You cannot control who understands you. You cannot control who appreciates you. You cannot control who changes. You cannot control who leaves. But you can control whether you abandon your dignity trying to stop them. There is enormous freedom in accepting that. Let people make their choices. Let them show you their priorities. Let them reveal how much effort they are willing to give when you stop carrying everything. Do not interrupt the truth. Do not rush in to repair every distance. Do not explain their silence before they explain it themselves. Sometimes your constant effort prevents you from seeing who a person truly is. Give them room. Then watch. Their actions will tell you what your hope kept refusing to accept. And when the truth becomes clear, respect it. If someone is comfortable losing you, stop exhausting yourself trying to make them afraid. If someone repeatedly shows you that your absence does not matter, stop using your presence to beg for importance. Walk away from the need to be chosen by someone who keeps making you feel optional. This does not mean the pain will disappear instantly. You may still miss them. You may still remember the good moments. You may still wonder what could have happened if things had been different. But missing someone does not mean you should return. Loving someone does not mean they are healthy for you. Remembering the good does not erase the damage. You can care and still walk away. You can forgive and still refuse access. You can wish someone well and still choose a life without them. That is emotional maturity. The goal is not to become someone who never cares. The goal is to stop becoming someone who destroys themselves every time another person stops caring. One day you will understand that the moment you stopped chasing was not the moment you lost them. It was the moment you stopped losing yourself. You will see how much energy returned to your life. You will remember how strange peace felt at first, because you were so used to uncertainty. You will realize that you were not asking for too much. You were simply asking the wrong person. And perhaps the most powerful lesson of all is this: The people who truly belong in your life should never require you to betray yourself in order to keep them. Let people leave if leaving is what they choose. Let them walk the path they believe is better without you. Let them discover whatever they think exists somewhere else. Your job is not to chase. Your job is to continue. Continue building. Continue healing. Continue growing. Continue becoming someone whose life is too meaningful to spend running behind people who keep walking away, because the moment you stop chasing people who are comfortable without you, you create space for something far more important, a life where you are finally comfortable with yourself. 6. You do not need closure from everyone who hurt you. One of the hardest lessons to accept is that some people will hurt you and never explain why. They will disappear without giving you the conversation you hoped for. They will change without warning. They will break your trust, leave questions behind, and continue living as if nothing happened. Meanwhile, you are left replaying every detail, trying to understand what you missed, what you did wrong, and what you could have done differently. You tell yourself that if they would just explain, apologize, or finally tell the truth, then perhaps you could move on. But this is where many people become trapped. They make their healing dependent on the same person who caused the wound. Closure can become another form of attachment. You may think you are searching for answers, but sometimes you are really searching for one more reason to stay connected, one more conversation, one more message, one more chance to hear something that makes the pain feel meaningful. You imagine that the perfect explanation will calm your mind, but often the person who confused you is not the person capable of giving you clarity. Some people do not understand themselves well enough to explain their behavior. Some know exactly what they did, but do not want to take responsibility. Some will give you an answer designed to protect their image rather than tell you the truth. Others may apologize only because they want access to you again, and sometimes the answer you receive will create 10 new questions. This is why waiting for closure can keep you emotionally imprisoned. You begin living with the belief that your life cannot move forward until someone else gives you permission. You wait for them to admit they were wrong. You wait for them to recognize your value. You wait for them to understand how deeply they hurt you. You wait for the apology that would finally make everything make sense. But what happens if it never comes? What happens if they never become self-aware? What happens if they never feel guilty? What happens if they remember the story differently? What happens if they know the truth and still refuse to give it to you? Will you allow their silence to control the rest of your life? At some point, you have to decide that your healing cannot depend on another person becoming the person you needed them to be. That decision is painful because the mind hates unfinished stories. The mind wants clear endings. It wants reasons. It wants justice. It wants every action to make sense. When someone leaves without explanation, betrays you without remorse, or changes suddenly, the mind keeps returning to the event because it believes there is something left to solve. You replay old conversations. You search for hidden meanings. You remember moments that seemed harmless at the time. You wonder whether the warning signs were always there. You ask yourself whether they ever truly cared. You imagine different endings. You create conversations in your head that may never happen in real life. This can continue for months or even years, because your mind believes understanding will protect you from pain. But understanding everything is not always possible. Sometimes there is no answer that will satisfy you. Sometimes a person hurt you because they were selfish. Sometimes they were emotionally immature. Sometimes they wanted what you gave but did not want the responsibility of treating you well. Sometimes they were confused. Sometimes they changed. Sometimes they simply did not care enough to protect the connection. And sometimes the most honest answer is the hardest one. They made a choice that hurt you because, in that moment, your pain was not enough to stop them. That truth may not feel like closure, but it may be enough reality to help you stop waiting. You do not need to understand every detail of someone's mind. to understand what their behavior did to your life. You do not need to know exactly why they lied to recognize that trust was broken. You do not need to know why they became distant to accept that you were left carrying the relationship alone. You do not need to know why they kept disappointing you to decide that disappointment can no longer be your normal. Sometimes the pattern is the answer. That is what many people miss while searching for closure. They keep asking, "Why did you do this?" But the more important question may be, what did this behavior teach me? It taught you that their words were not reliable. It taught you that you were repeatedly left confused. It taught you that you could not feel secure around them. It taught you that you kept losing peace trying to maintain the connection. It taught you that they knew what hurt you and continued anyway. How many more answers do you need before you trust what you experienced? Closure is not always a final conversation. Sometimes closure is the moment you stop arguing with reality. It is the moment you stop trying to turn someone into a person they have repeatedly shown you they are not. It is the moment you stop waiting for an apology to prove your pain was real. Your pain was real even if they never acknowledge it. Your disappointment was real even if they minimize it. Your experience does not become false because the person who caused it refuses to understand it. You do not need someone else's agreement before you are allowed to heal. This is especially important when you have been hurt by someone who avoids responsibility. People who cannot face what they have done may rewrite the story. They may tell themselves you were too sensitive. They may focus only on your reaction and ignore what caused it. They may remember the times you became angry but conveniently forget the months of behavior that pushed you there. They may make themselves the victim because accepting the truth would require them to change. If you keep waiting for such a person to validate your experience, you may wait forever. You cannot force self-awareness into someone. You cannot argue a person into accountability. You cannot explain your pain so perfectly that someone with no intention of understanding suddenly becomes compassionate. There comes a point where repeating yourself becomes another way of hurting yourself. You say the same things. You explain the same wounds. You describe the same disrespect. You hope that this time your words will finally reach them. But if someone has heard you many times and nothing changes, the problem may not be that you have not explained yourself clearly enough. The problem may be that they do not want to change. That realization is a form of closure. You may not like it. It may not be the ending you wanted. But truth does not become less true because it is painful. Sometimes the most powerful closure is accepting that the relationship ended because continuing it would have required you to keep betraying yourself. That is enough. You do not need one final conversation to prove that walking away was necessary. You do not need them to miss you. You do not need them to regret losing you. You do not need them to come back years later and admit you were right. Your healing should not require their suffering. This is another trap people fall into. They say they want closure, but deep down they are waiting for the other person to feel the pain they caused. They want them to regret leaving. They want them to realize what they lost. They want them to return and say, "I made a mistake." That fantasy can keep you emotionally attached for years. You imagine a future moment when everything will finally be reversed. The person who rejected you will want you. The person who ignored you will chase you. The person who broke you will finally understand your worth. But even if that day comes, it cannot return the time you lost waiting for it. Do not build your healing around the hope of becoming someone's regret. Build a life you no longer need them to regret losing. That is freedom. Closure becomes powerful when it stops being something you ask another person to give you and becomes something you create for yourself. You create closure by accepting what happened. You create closure by stopping contact when contact keeps reopening the wound. You create closure by refusing to search for hidden meaning in behavior that was already clear. You create closure by choosing not to return to a place that repeatedly made you question your worth. You create closure when you stop making your future responsible for repairing your past. This does not mean you pretend the experience never mattered. It does not mean you force yourself to forget. It does not mean you wake up one morning and suddenly feel nothing. Healing is not that simple. There may be days when you feel strong and days when a memory brings everything back. There may be songs, places, dates, or small details that remind you of what happened. There may be moments when you want to reach out simply because the silence feels unfinished. But an unfinished feeling does not mean you need to reopen a finished relationship. That distinction can save you. Sometimes the desire for closure is strongest when you are lonely. You do not necessarily want the person back. You want relief. You want certainty. You want the discomfort to stop. And because your mind associates that person with both the wound and the comfort, it tells you that another conversation might help. But going back to the source of confusion rarely creates lasting peace. Sometimes it only restarts the cycle. You ask for answers. They give you half of one. You begin hoping again. They become distant again. You are hurt again. Then you ask for closure again. This is how emotional loops continue. At some point, you must be the person who closes the door. Not dramatically, not with revenge, not with hatred, simply with acceptance. You accept that not every relationship ends with mutual understanding. You accept that not every person who hurt you will become sorry. You accept that some endings will always contain unanswered questions. You accept that peace sometimes requires moving forward without knowing everything. That is maturity. People often believe closure means understanding why something happened, but sometimes closure means understanding that you may never understand and learning to live anyway. That is much harder, but it is also much more powerful. Because once you stop demanding answers from the past, you can begin asking better questions about the future. What do I want to learn from this? What will I never tolerate again? What warning signs will I trust next time? Where did I abandon myself? What did I keep trying to excuse? What kind of person do I want to become after this? These questions move you forward. The question, why did they do this to me, can keep you trapped inside someone else's mind. The question, what will I do with what happened, returns your power to you. You may never control the reason, but you can control the meaning. You can decide that betrayal will teach you discernment rather than permanent suspicion. You can decide that abandonment will teach you how to stand alone rather than make you beg the next person to stay. You can decide that disappointment will sharpen your standards rather than destroy your ability to love. You can decide that pain will become information, not identity. This is how you transform an ending. The goal is not to pretend you were never hurt. The goal is to stop allowing the hurt to control every relationship that comes after. Some people leave a wound and then continue living their lives. If you spend the next 10 years allowing that wound to shape every decision, they continue influencing you without even being present. Do not give the past that much authority. Learn from it, respect what it taught you, then release its right to control your future. You can remember someone without returning to them. You can forgive someone without trusting them again. You can understand someone without excusing what they did. You can love someone and still know that they do not belong in your life. These truths can exist together. Healing does not always require hatred. Sometimes you do not need to turn the other person into a monster in order to leave. Perhaps they were wounded too. Perhaps they were afraid. Perhaps they were carrying problems you did not understand. Perhaps they did the best they were capable of doing at that time. You can understand all of that and still decide that what they offered was not healthy for you. Compassion does not require self-abandonment. You can say, I understand why you became this way, but I will not let it destroy me. That is a mature form of closure. You stop needing someone to be completely evil before you give yourself permission to walk away. Sometimes two truths exist at once. They may have cared about you in the only way they knew how, and that way may still have hurt you. They may have loved you, and they may still have been incapable of giving you a healthy relationship. They may have had good qualities, and the connection may still have needed to end. Closure often comes when you stop forcing the past into simple categories. Not every person who hurt you hated you. Not every relationship that ended was completely fake. Not every memory needs to be destroyed. Some things were real. Some moments were beautiful. Some feelings were genuine. And the ending still happened. You can honor what was good without returning to what became harmful. That is one of the deepest forms of letting go. You stop trying to erase the entire story just because the ending hurt. You simply accept that the story has ended. There is a difference. When you reach that point, you begin to feel lighter, not because you received every answer, not because the person apologized, not because the past changed. You feel lighter because you finally stopped carrying the responsibility of solving something that was never entirely yours to solve. You stop asking yourself what you could have done to make someone become ready. You stop believing that if you had been more patient, more attractive, more successful, more forgiving, or less emotional, everything would have turned out differently. You begin understanding that relationships are shaped by two people. You were not responsible for every failure. You were not responsible for every distance. You were not responsible for every broken promise. You cannot carry responsibility for choices another person made freely. Take responsibility for your part. Learn from your mistakes. Apologize where necessary. Grow where necessary. But do not take responsibility for someone else's character. That burden will crush you. Sometimes closure means releasing yourself from blame. You may have stayed too long. You may have ignored signs. You may have given chances that should not have been given. You may have known something was wrong and still hoped love would fix it. Forgive yourself for that. You were making decisions with the awareness you had at the time. Now you know more. Let that knowledge change your future, instead of becoming another reason to punish your past. You do not need to hate who you were before you learned the lesson. That version of you was trying to survive with the tools they had. Be grateful that you know better now. There is another truth you must understand. Some closure arrives years later, but by then you may no longer need it. One day the person may explain. One day they may apologize. One day they may admit they were wrong. And by that time you may realize the answer no longer has the power you once thought it would, because you healed without it. That is one of the strongest places a person can reach. The apology becomes something you can appreciate without depending on. The explanation becomes information, not medicine. You no longer need them to repair what you already rebuilt. That is what self-created closure gives you. It gives you the ability to continue even when the story does not end perfectly. Life will not always give you clean endings. People will not always say the right things. Some doors will close suddenly. Some relationships will fade. Some friendships will disappear without a final conversation. Some people will become strangers while still carrying parts of your history. You cannot control that, but you can control whether you spend your life standing at closed doors asking why they closed. At some point you have to turn around. There is still a life behind you. There are still people you have not met. There are still places you have not seen. There are still versions of yourself you have not become. There are still mornings waiting for you that have nothing to do with the person who hurt you. Do not miss them because you are waiting for someone from your past to explain why they left. You may never receive the answer. Move anyway. You may never hear the apology. Heal anyway. They may never understand what they did. Choose peace anyway. They may never regret losing you. Build a beautiful life anyway. That is how you take your power back. Closure is not always something another person gives you. Sometimes closure is the day you decide that the unanswered questions no longer deserve another year of your life. Sometimes closure is deleting the message you keep rewriting. Sometimes closure is accepting that silence is also an answer. Sometimes closure is finally believing the behavior instead of waiting for better words. Sometimes closure is realizing that you have already learned enough. You do not need one more explanation. You do not need one more conversation. You do not need one more chance to be disappointed. You need permission to continue. Give it to yourself. The person who hurt you may never return to close the chapter properly. That is all right. The chapter can still end. You are allowed to turn the page without their signature. You are allowed to heal without their apology. You are allowed to move forward without understanding everything. And the moment you stop waiting for someone else to give you closure, you discover something far more powerful. You are capable of freeing yourself all along. 7. Build a life so full that no one becomes your entire world. One of the most dangerous things you can do is make one person the center of your entire life. It often happens slowly. At first you simply enjoy their presence. You look forward to their messages. You begin sharing your thoughts, your plans, your fears, and your dreams with them. Then, without noticing, Your world starts becoming smaller. You stop doing things you once enjoyed. You lose interest in your own goals. Your routines begin revolving around their availability. Your mood depends on their attention. Your future begins to feel connected to whether they stay. And eventually, what started as love becomes dependence. This is how a person becomes your entire world. The problem is not that you cared deeply. The problem is that you stopped building a life that could stand without them. When your life is empty, one person can fill too much space. Their attention feels bigger because there is nothing else competing with it. Their absence feels devastating because there is no structure underneath you. Their silence becomes louder because your own life has become too quiet. This is why some people do not simply miss a relationship when it ends. They feel as if they have lost their identity. They do not know what to do with their evenings. They do not know what they enjoy anymore. They do not know what they want outside the relationship. They do not know who they are without being connected to that person. That is a frightening place to be. But it is also a warning. You were never meant to build your entire existence around one human being. People are part of your life. They should not become your whole life. This does not make love less meaningful. It makes love healthier. A strong relationship is two people bringing full lives together, not one person disappearing inside the other. You should have dreams that still matter when someone is busy. You should have goals that still excite you when nobody is watching. You should have interests that belong to you. You should have a sense of direction that does not collapse every time another person changes their mind. The fuller your own life becomes, the less likely you are to confuse attachment with love. This is because emotional dependence often grows in empty spaces. When you do not know what you are building, you start building your identity around another person. When you have no mission, their attention becomes your mission. When you have no routine, waiting for them becomes your routine. When you have no purpose, the relationship becomes your purpose. And once that happens, you become terrified of anything that threatens the connection. You may begin tolerating behavior you once would have rejected. You may become afraid to disagree. You may become afraid to set boundaries. You may become afraid to grow in a direction that they do not understand. Why? Because losing them does not feel like losing one person anymore. It feels like losing everything. That is the real danger. The more of your identity you place inside someone else's hands, the more frightened you become of them changing. This is why building your own life is not selfish. It is necessary. You need something that belongs to you. A direction, a discipline, a set of values, a future, a reason to wake up that does not depend on whether somebody messages you in the morning. You need days that still contain meaning when nobody is giving you attention. You need a life that still moves when somebody walks away. That is what emotional strength looks like. Start by asking yourself a difficult question. If the person you care about disappeared from your life tomorrow, what would still remain? Would your goals remain? Would your routines remain? Would your friendships remain? Would your confidence remain? Would your identity remain? Would your plans remain? Would you still recognize your own life? If the answer is no, then you have given too much of yourself away. Do not wait until loss teaches you this. Begin rebuilding now. Build a life that has many pillars. Your peace should not rest on one person. Your happiness should not depend on one relationship. Your identity should not come from one source. When a building stands on one pillar, everything collapses when that pillar breaks. Your emotional life works the same way. You need multiple sources of meaning. You need your health, your goals, your work, your interests, your friendships, your values, your private dreams, your personal growth, your ability to enjoy your own company, not because you should never need anyone, but because no single person should carry the entire weight of your existence. That is too much power to give someone, and too much responsibility to place on them. Sometimes people become dependent because they believe being deeply attached proves the depth of their love. They think, if I can live without you, maybe I do not love you enough. That is false. Healthy love is not measured by how completely you fall apart without someone. Love can be deep without becoming destructive. You can miss someone and still function. You can care and still have boundaries. You can love and still have a life of your own. You can be committed and still remain an individual. In fact, This often creates stronger relationships because you are no longer using another person to fill every emotional need. When your life is empty, you may demand constant attention. You may interpret their need for space as rejection. You may become anxious when they are busy. You may expect one person to entertain you, reassure you, motivate you, comfort you, validate you, and give meaning to your life. That pressure can damage even a good relationship. No person can be everything, and you should not expect them to be. You need to become someone who can create meaning instead of constantly waiting to receive it. That begins with responsibility. Ask yourself what parts of your life you have neglected. Perhaps you stopped working toward a goal because all your emotional energy went into a relationship. Perhaps you stopped seeing friends because one person became your main source of connection. Perhaps you stopped learning. Perhaps you stopped taking care of your body. Perhaps you stopped dreaming. Perhaps you became so focused on keeping someone that you forgot to keep building yourself. This is how people wake up years later and realize they no longer know who they are. Do not let that become your story. Return to the parts of yourself you left behind. Return to the interests you abandoned. Return to the goals you postponed. Return to the routines that made you feel strong. Return to the dreams you stopped talking about because someone else did not understand them. Return to yourself. This does not mean pushing everyone away. It means bringing yourself back into your own life. Your life should contain things that nobody can take from you simply by leaving. A skill cannot abandon you. Discipline cannot suddenly choose someone else. Knowledge does not disappear because someone stops loving you. The strength you build inside yourself travels with you. This is why personal growth matters so much. Every skill you learn creates independence. Every promise you keep to yourself creates self-trust. Every difficult thing you complete proves that you can rely on yourself. Every hour spent building something meaningful reduces the amount of emotional space available for unhealthy obsession. A full life changes the way you love. You stop clinging because your whole world is no longer concentrated in one place. You stop panicking over distance because you still have a direction. You stop begging for attention because you have things in your own life that deserve your attention. You stop making someone else's behavior the most important event of your day. This is one of the clearest signs that you are becoming emotionally stronger. You stop checking your phone every 5 minutes because your life is happening somewhere other than the screen. You have work to do. You have places to go. You have goals to reach. You have a body to care for. You have a mind to strengthen. You have a future to create. That does not mean you become too busy to love. It means love no longer replaces living. There is a big difference. Many people secretly believe that when the right person arrives, life will finally begin. They postpone happiness. They postpone adventures. They postpone confidence. They postpone becoming who they want to become. They tell themselves that one day when they meet someone, they will feel complete. But this is how years disappear. You cannot put your entire life on hold waiting for another person to make it meaningful. Your life is happening now, not when someone chooses you, not when someone returns, not when someone finally sees your worth. Now, you are responsible for creating a life that feels alive before anyone joins you. If someone comes into that life, let them add to it. Do not hand it over. Do not stop becoming yourself just because you found someone you love. This happens more often than people admit. They enter a relationship and slowly become smaller. They stop making independent decisions. They stop spending time alone. They stop pursuing goals that create distance. They begin shaping every choice around whether the other person approves. At first, this may feel like compromise. But there is a point where compromise becomes disappearance. You should not have to erase your personality to maintain love. You should not have to abandon your future to prove commitment. You should not have to become less of yourself to make another person feel secure. Real connection should make room for growth. Two people should be able to love each other without becoming emotionally fused into one identity. You are still you. They are still them. That is healthy. This is why your personal world matters. Have things that are yours. A morning routine, a private goal, a book you are reading, a project you are building, a place you enjoy going, a skill you are learning, a vision for your future. These things may look small, but together they create emotional stability. When your life has substance, One person's behavior cannot dominate every thought. You can be disappointed and still have a day. You can miss someone and still work. You can experience distance and still remain grounded. You can lose a relationship without losing the entire architecture of your existence. This is what a full life protects you from. It does not protect you from pain. It protects you from total collapse. There is a difference. You will still feel loss. You will still miss people. You will still have difficult nights. But you will have somewhere inside your own life to return. That matters. Think of how dangerous it is when a person becomes your only source of joy. If they are happy with you, you feel alive. If they are distant, everything becomes grey. If they leave, you believe nothing matters. This is too much control. No person should be able to shut down your entire life by changing how they feel about you. You must create parts of yourself that remain yours regardless of who stays. That begins with purpose. Purpose does not need to be something dramatic. You do not need to change the world. You need a reason to move forward. Something you are building. Something you are learning, something that asks more from you. Purpose gives your energy somewhere to go. Without it, emotional obsession can easily take over. The mind needs a direction. If you do not give it one, it may spend hours thinking about someone who is not thinking about you. It may analyze messages, replay conversations, imagine possibilities, create fears, wait for signs. Purpose interrupts that cycle. It reminds you that your life is larger than one relationship. You have work to do. You have something to become. You have a future that will not build itself. Discipline also matters. A person who keeps promises to themselves becomes less desperate for validation from others. Why? Because self-trust begins growing. When you say you will wake up and you do, you build trust. When you say you will exercise and you do, you build trust. When you say you will stop contacting someone who keeps hurting you and you keep that promise, you build trust. Every act of discipline sends a message to your mind. I can rely on myself. That message is powerful. People become dangerously dependent when they do not trust themselves. They believe they need another person to guide them, reassure them, or hold them together. But self-trust changes this. You begin knowing that even if life becomes difficult, you will not completely abandon yourself. You will still get up. You will still make decisions. You will still rebuild. That confidence reduces fear. And the less afraid you are of surviving without someone, the less control they have over you. You also need relationships beyond one person. This does not mean collecting people to avoid loneliness. It means not isolating your entire emotional world inside one connection. Have friends. Have family connections where possible. Have people you can talk to. Have communities. Have spaces where different parts of you can exist. One person should not be expected to meet every emotional need you have. That is not fair to them or healthy for you. Different relationships bring different things. Some people make you laugh. Some challenge you. Some understand your work. Some share your interests. Some know your history. A healthy life has variety. When you make one person your only emotional connection, losing them feels like losing everyone. Do not create that kind of vulnerability. Keep living. Keep connecting. Keep maintaining parts of your world outside any single relationship. And learn to enjoy your own company too. This is perhaps the most important pillar, because even with friends, goals, and purpose, there will be moments when you are alone. Can you survive those moments without panicking? Can you sit with yourself? Can you enjoy a quiet evening? Can you go somewhere alone? Can you have a good day without needing someone else to confirm that it was good? These questions matter. A full life is not simply a busy life. You can fill every hour and still feel empty. Some people use constant activity to avoid themselves. That is not fullness. A full life has meaning. It has intention. It has moments of work and moments of rest. It has people, but it also has solitude. It has ambition, but it also has peace. It has goals, but it also has the ability to be present. The goal is not to stay distracted so you never feel. The goal is to become so connected to your own life that another person's presence becomes a gift, not a necessity. There is freedom in saying, I love you, but I also have a life. There is freedom in knowing that you can share yourself without surrendering yourself. There is freedom in being able to say, I want you here, but I will not stop living if you leave. This is not cold. It is strong. It creates a different kind of love. Love without desperation. Love without constant fear. Love without the hidden threat that one person's departure will destroy everything. When you build a full life, you begin choosing people differently. You no longer look for someone to save you from boredom. You no longer accept poor treatment just because you hate being alone. You no longer stay simply because starting over feels empty. You become more selective. You ask better questions. Does this person add peace to the life I already built? Do they respect my goals? Do they support my growth? Can I still be myself around them? Do I become stronger with them? Or do I disappear? These are mature questions. They come from someone who is no longer begging for any connection at any cost. A full life raises your standards naturally. You become less impressed by attention alone. You have already learned how to give yourself attention. You become less impressed by someone simply wanting you. You begin caring about how they treat you. You become less afraid of losing people. You become more afraid of losing yourself. That is a healthier fear, because losing yourself can take years to recover from. People often notice too late that they abandoned their own life gradually. It happened one compromise at a time, one cancelled goal, one ignored dream, one boundary they were afraid to set, one friendship they stopped maintaining, one habit they abandoned, one version of themselves they stopped becoming. Then one day the relationship ends, and they realize there is almost nothing left. Do not wait for that day. Build now, even if you are in love, even if the relationship feels secure, even if you believe someone will stay forever. Keep building yourself, because people can love you and still change. Life can change. Circumstances can change. Nothing outside you is completely guaranteed. Your responsibility is not to live in fear of loss. Your responsibility is to build inner stability so that change does not erase you. That is wisdom. You are not preparing to lose people. You are preparing to remain yourself no matter what happens. There is a difference. A full life also helps you stop idealizing people. When your world becomes too small, one person can appear larger than they are. You may begin believing nobody else could understand you. Nobody else could make you feel that way. Nobody else could ever replace what you lost. This happens because all your emotional attention is concentrated on one person. But when you return to the larger world, perspective returns too. There are new experiences, new places, new conversations, new parts of yourself, new possibilities. You begin realizing that your life is much bigger than one chapter. That realization is healing. The person you thought was your entire future may have only been part of it. The ending you thought destroyed everything may have only made room for something different. You could not see it while your entire world was built around them. But once you begin rebuilding, your perspective expands. This is why grief becomes lighter when life begins moving again. Not because you forget, because the lost person stops occupying every room inside your mind. New experiences begin entering, new meaning develops, new parts of your identity grow. Your world becomes larger than the absence. That is one of the most powerful reasons to keep building. You are not trying to replace people. You are refusing to let one loss become your permanent identity. Keep living. Even when you are sad, keep growing. Even when part of you still misses them, keep building. Even when you do not feel fully motivated. A full life is not created in one dramatic moment. It is created through small decisions repeated over time. Read one page, take one walk, learn one skill, make one plan, keep one promise to yourself, call one healthy person, finish one task, create one good day, then another. Slowly, your life begins to belong to you again. This is how you stop needing one person to make everything feel complete. You stop waiting for completion. You start creating substance. Eventually, something changes inside you. You no longer wake up wondering who will text you. You wake up knowing what matters today. You no longer wait for someone else's attention to feel alive. You already have a life asking for your attention. You no longer fear every distance. You know where you stand. You no longer panic at the possibility of someone someone leaving, you know what will remain. You, your direction, your values, your growth, your future. This is what you were building all along. A life that love can enter without becoming a prison. A life where people can matter deeply without becoming responsible for your entire emotional survival. A life where you can say, I care about you, without secretly meaning, without you, I am nothing, because you are not nothing without anyone. You were a complete human being before they arrived. You remain one if they leave. Never forget that. The people in your life may add beauty. They may add joy. They may add companionship. They may become deeply important to you. But they should never become the only reason you believe your life has meaning. Your life has meaning because it is yours. You are responsible for what you build with it. Do not hand that responsibility to another person. Do not sit in an empty life waiting for someone to fill it. Fill it yourself. Fill it with purpose. Fill it with discipline. Fill it with learning. Fill it with movement. Fill it with people who respect you. Fill it with quiet moments that belong only to you. Fill it with dreams that existed before anyone promised to stay. Then something remarkable happens. You stop needing someone to complete your world. You invite them into one that is already alive. And if they stay, you love them without losing yourself. If they leave, you hurt without losing everything. That is the difference between attachment and strength. Build your life until no single person can become your entire world. Not because people do not matter, but because you matter too. 8. Stand alone until you no longer fear who leaves. There comes a point in your life when you have to stop asking people to prove that they will never leave and start proving to yourself that you will survive if they do. This is one of the hardest forms of strength because it requires you to accept something most people spend their lives trying to avoid. No matter how deeply you love someone, no matter how loyal you are, no matter how many promises are made, you cannot control who stays. People change. Feelings change, priorities change, circumstances change. Someone can mean everything to you today and still become a stranger years from now. Someone can promise forever and later decide that forever no longer includes you. Someone can once fight to keep you and later become the person walking away. This does not mean love is meaningless. It means human beings are not permanent guarantees. And if your entire sense of safety depends on another person never changing, you will live in fear. You will analyze every small distance. You will panic when their behavior shifts. You will become afraid to speak honestly because honesty might upset them. You will accept things that hurt because setting a boundary might make them leave. You will become easier to control because anyone who knows you are terrified of losing them also knows how much you are willing to sacrifice to keep them. That is the brutal truth about fear of abandonment. The fear of losing someone can make you lose yourself first. You start giving away pieces of your identity. You become quieter, more careful, more agreeable. You stop saying what you truly think. You stop asking for what you need. You lower your standards. You forgive things that are never repaired. You accept apologies without changed behavior. You tell yourself that keeping the relationship is more important than protecting your dignity. But what exactly are you protecting if you have to disappear in order to keep it? A relationship is not a victory if staying in it requires you to abandon yourself. This is why learning to stand alone matters. Standing alone does not mean rejecting love. It does not mean becoming emotionally cold. It does not mean deciding that nobody can be trusted. Standing alone means becoming strong enough to know that even if someone leaves, your life does not leave with them. It means knowing that grief may hurt you without destroying your identity. It means being able to say, I hope you stay, but I will not betray myself to stop you from going. That sentence requires enormous strength. Most people cannot say it honestly. They say they have boundaries until the person they love threatens to leave. They say they know their worth until someone they desperately want becomes distant. They say they would never tolerate disrespect until loneliness begins frightening them more than the disrespect itself. This is when your real strength is tested, not when everything is secure, not when everyone is treating you well, not when the people you love are promising to stay. Your strength is tested when you realize someone may leave and you have to choose between keeping them and keeping yourself. The old version of you may chase. The old version of you may beg. The old version of you may send another message, offer another chance, lower another standard, and accept another excuse. But the stronger version of you begins to understand something deeper. Anyone you have to destroy yourself to keep has already cost too much. Let that truth settle. You can miss someone and still let them go. You can love someone and still refuse to chase them. You can wish things were different and still accept what they have become. You can be heartbroken and still walk away with dignity. Strength does not mean you feel nothing. Strength means your feelings no longer control every decision you make. You may want them back. You may miss the old version of the relationship. You may remember the good days. You may imagine how beautiful things could have been if they had changed. But your heart wanting something does not automatically make that thing healthy for your life. This is where maturity begins. You stop asking only, "Do I love them?" You begin asking, "What is this love doing to me? Is it making you stronger or smaller? Is it bringing peace or constant anxiety? Is it allowing you to grow or forcing you to abandon yourself? Are you loved, or are you surviving on occasional attention? Are you chosen, or are you simply available whenever they need you?" These questions are uncomfortable because they force you to stop romanticizing what hurts. But they also free you. Many people fear being alone because they imagine loneliness as emptiness. They imagine a quiet room, no messages, no one asking where they are, no one waiting for them. They imagine this and immediately feel afraid. So they stay connected to anyone who can prevent that silence. But there is something worse than an empty room. It is a crowded life where you still feel alone. There is something worse than nobody messaging you. It is waiting all day for one person who only remembers you when it is convenient. There is something worse than sleeping alone. It is lying beside someone while feeling emotionally invisible. Do not let fear convince you that any company is better than solitude. Sometimes solitude is where your dignity returns. Sometimes being alone is the first place you finally stop begging. Sometimes losing someone creates the silence you needed to hear your own voice again. But you have to stay in that silence long enough for it to change you. At first, it may feel unbearable. You may wake up and immediately think of them. You may reach for your phone without thinking. You may feel the emptiness of routines that once included another person. You may want to contact them simply to stop the discomfort. This is where many people break their own healing. They cannot tolerate the temporary pain of separation, so they return to the permanent pain of dependence. You have to learn to stay. Stay with the discomfort. Stay with the silence. Stay with yourself. Not forever. Just long enough to discover that you are still here. You wake up, you breathe, you work, you eat, you think, you continue. At first, continuing may feel mechanical. Then slowly something begins to return. Your attention, your energy, your perspective, your identity. You begin noticing how much mental space one person was occupying. You begin remembering things you had forgotten about yourself. You begin realizing that your life did not end when they left. It changed. There is a difference. Change can feel like destruction when you are deeply attached to what existed before. But not everything that ends destroys you. Some endings reveal you. They reveal what you were depending on. They reveal what you were afraid to face. They reveal where you had become weak. They reveal how much power you had placed outside yourself. And once you see that clearly, you can begin rebuilding differently. You stop making promises to yourself that depend on another person. You stop saying, "I will be happy when they come back." You stop saying, "I will feel complete when someone chooses me." You stop saying, "I cannot do this alone." Instead, you begin asking, what happens if I become the person I keep waiting for? What if you become the one who protects your peace? What if you become the one who keeps promises to you? What if you become the one who builds the life you thought someone else would give you? This is not about pretending you do not need connection. Human beings need connection. We need love. We need friendship. We need community. But needing connection is different from making one person responsible for your survival. That is the distinction you must understand. You can value people without worshipping their presence. You can love people without placing your entire identity inside them. You can depend on others in healthy ways without becoming helpless when one person changes. Standing alone does not mean never leaning on anyone. It means knowing that if one support disappears, you still have a foundation. That That foundation is you, your values, your discipline, your ability to make decisions, your ability to rebuild, your ability to grieve without giving up, your ability to create meaning after loss. You need to strengthen that foundation before life forces you to test it, because sooner or later someone will leave. Maybe not through betrayal, maybe not through rejection. Maybe life simply moves people in different directions. Some friendships fade, some relationships end, some people move away, some people change beyond recognition, some people are lost to circumstances no one can control. If your entire identity depends on people never leaving, life will keep frightening you. But when you understand that you can survive change, you begin loving differently. You stop gripping so tightly. You stop trying to control people. You stop reading every small distance as a disaster. You stop turning love into fear. You let people breathe. You let yourself breathe. You choose connection without making it captivity. This creates a strange kind of peace. You begin understanding that someone staying is beautiful, but you do not need to imprison them emotionally to make it happen. Let people choose you freely. You should never have to manipulate someone into staying. You should never have to make them guilty for wanting something different. You should never have to beg for a place in a life where you are repeatedly treated as optional. Let people make their choices, then make yours. If they choose distance, you choose dignity. If they choose dishonesty, you choose boundaries. If they choose to stop trying, you choose not to carry everything alone. If they choose another path, you choose to keep walking yours. This is where power returns. Not when you force someone to stay, when you realize you do not have to. You were never meant to spend your life convincing reluctant people to love you. You were never meant to become exhausted proving your value to someone who benefits from doubting it. You were never meant to live in constant fear that one wrong move would make someone abandon you. Love should not feel like an endless audition. You should not have to perform perfectly to remain worthy of care. The right people may still become upset. They may disagree with you. They may need space. Relationships are not perfect. But healthy connection does not require you to live in permanent terror. That terror is what you must outgrow. Sometimes it comes from old wounds. Perhaps someone left when you were younger. Perhaps you were made to feel easy to replace. Perhaps people you trusted became inconsistent. Perhaps you learned that love could disappear without warning. These experiences can teach you to cling. You begin believing that if you are good enough, useful enough, attractive enough, patient enough, or forgiving enough, nobody will leave. But life does not work that way. You cannot earn a guarantee. People do not always leave because you failed. Sometimes they leave because of who they are. Sometimes they leave because they want something different. Sometimes they leave because the relationship has reached its end. Sometimes two good people simply stop belonging in the same future. Do not make every goodbye proof that you were not enough. That belief will destroy you. You can be deeply valuable and still be left. You can be loving and still be rejected. You can do your best and still lose someone. Your worth is not decided by who stays. Remember that. Some people will leave you and later appreciate what they lost. Some will leave and never look back. Some will remember you with love. Some will rewrite the story. Some will regret it. Some will not. None of these outcomes can become the foundation of your self-worth. You cannot build your identity around being remembered. You cannot heal only if they regret leaving. You cannot become strong only when they finally understand what they lost. That still gives them too much power. You need a deeper form of freedom. You need to reach the point where their regret is no longer necessary, where their return is no longer your dream, where their opinion no longer decides whether you were valuable. This is when standing alone becomes real. You stop waiting for someone to come back and confirm that you were worthy all along. You confirm it through how you live. You build, you grow, you keep your word to yourself. You stop returning to places that repeatedly break you. You stop confusing longing with destiny. You stop believing that pain must be permanent because the connection felt important. You begin creating a life that becomes evidence of your own resilience. This process takes time. Do not expect yourself to become emotionally independent overnight. You may have spent years depending on other people for validation, foundation. You may have built habits around being chosen. You may have measured your worth through attention. Changing that requires practice. Start with small moments. Do something alone. Make a decision without asking 5 people what they think. Keep one promise to yourself. Spend one evening without chasing distraction. Let one unanswered message remain unanswered. Let one person be distant without immediately running after them. Let one uncomfortable silence exist. Notice what happens. You survive. That is how confidence is built, not by telling yourself you are strong, by collecting evidence. Every time you face something difficult and continue, your mind learns. Every time someone disappoints you and you do not abandon yourself, your mind learns. Every time you resist the urge to chase someone who keeps walking away, your mind learns. Every time you choose your dignity over temporary relief, your mind learns. The lesson becomes clear. I can handle this. Those 4 words can change your life. I can handle being misunderstood. I can handle someone choosing differently. I can handle loneliness. I can handle disappointment. I can handle grief. I can handle rebuilding. This does not mean everything becomes easy. It means difficulty stops feeling like the end. That is real confidence. Many people think confidence means believing nothing bad will happen. It does not. Confidence is believing that even if something painful happens, you will find a way through it. You do not need absolute control when you trust your ability to respond. That is how fear begins losing power. You stop trying to guarantee that nobody leaves. You focus on becoming someone who will not leave themselves. That is the promise you can control. Promise yourself that if someone walks away, you will not spend years destroying yourself to understand why. Promise yourself that you will grieve, but you will continue. Promise yourself that you will not beg someone to choose you while ignoring the fact that you can choose yourself. Promise yourself that love will never again require complete self-abandonment. This is one of the most important commitments you will ever make, because people will disappoint you. Not everyone, not always, but it will happen. Someone will misunderstand your heart. Someone will fail to appreciate your effort. Someone will take more than they give. Someone will make a promise they cannot keep. You cannot prevent every wound, but you can decide what happens next. Do you stay where the same wound is repeated? Do you let one person's behavior define your future? Do you build walls against everyone because one person hurt you? Or do you learn, adjust, and continue? Standing alone does not mean becoming bitter. Bitterness is still a form of attachment. You may not be chasing the person anymore, but if your entire life becomes organized around proving them wrong, they still control you. If you become cold because of what they did, they still shaped you. If you refuse to love again because they hurt you, their actions still decide your future. That is not freedom. Freedom is carrying the lesson without carrying the poison. You become wiser, not harder. You become more careful, not permanently closed. You develop boundaries without becoming cruel. You understand that some people cannot be trusted without deciding that nobody can. You continue believing in connection, but now you refuse to lose yourself inside it. That is growth. The goal was never to become a person who needs nobody. The goal is to stop needing any one person so desperately that you become willing to betray yourself. There is a difference. You can have people you love deeply. You can miss them when they are gone. You can ask for help. You can depend on others. You can share your life. But underneath all of that, there should be something solid, a quiet knowledge. If life changes, I will still be here. If someone leaves, I will still have a future. If a chapter ends, I will still have pages left. If I lose what I thought I needed, I will discover what remains. This knowledge creates emotional freedom. You stop treating every relationship like your final chance at happiness. You stop holding on to people whose presence is destroying your peace. You stop interpreting departure as personal annihilation. You begin understanding that sometimes life removes what you were too afraid to release. And although it hurts, the empty space may eventually become room. Room to think, room to grow, room to rebuild. room for people who do not require you to shrink. But first, you have to stop filling every empty space with the same kind of person. This is where many people repeat their pain. They leave one dependent relationship and immediately enter another. They cannot tolerate the gap. They need someone to make them feel chosen again. So they bring the same fear into a new connection. They become attached quickly. They ignore warning signs. They mistake attention for compatibility. They begin building their identity around the new person before they have rebuilt themselves. Then the cycle repeats. Break the cycle. Give yourself time. Learn who you are without constantly being reflected through another person's eyes. Ask yourself what you actually want. What kind of life do you want? What kind of people belong in it? What behaviors will you no longer excuse? What parts of yourself need strengthening? What dreams did you postpone? What standards did you lower? What did fear make you accept? These questions rebuild you. They return authority to your own hands. You stop living only as someone who was left. You begin becoming someone who learned. That shift matters. Do not make abandonment your identity. Do not make betrayal your identity. Do not make loneliness your identity. These are experiences. They are not your entire story. You are more than what happened to you. You are more than who failed to recognize your value. You are more than the relationship that ended. You are more than the people who walked away. You still have the ability to choose what happens next. And one day, after enough time has passed and enough strength has been built, you will notice something surprising. The thought of someone leaving will no longer terrify you the way it once did. You will still care. You will still hope the people you love remain. But underneath that love, there will be stability. You will know that nobody's presence can become the sole foundation of your life again. You will know that love is beautiful, but you are still responsible for your own existence. You will know that if someone chooses to go, you will not chase them until you disappear. You will let the truth be the truth. You will grieve what was real. You will honor what mattered. Then you will continue. This is what it means to stand alone. It does not mean standing without people. It means standing without collapsing when people change. It means your legs belong to you. Your identity belongs to you. Your future belongs to you. Your peace belongs to you. You may share them with others, but you do not surrender ownership. That is the final lesson. You do not stop needing people by becoming heartless. You stop needing them desperately by becoming rooted in yourself. You build a life. You build purpose. You build discipline. You build boundaries. You build self-trust. You learn to enjoy your own company. You learn to survive disappointment. You learn that missing someone is not a command to return. You learn that loneliness is temporary. You learn that closure can come from within. You learn that your happiness cannot live entirely inside another person's hands. And slowly, you become someone different, someone who can love without begging, someone who can care without losing themselves, someone who can let people come without making them responsible for everything, someone who can let people go without believing life is over. That person is not cold. That person is free. So let people reveal themselves. Let people choose. Let people come. Let people go. Do not force what must be free. Do not chase what keeps running. Do not beg people to see what they have repeatedly refused to value. Stand still. Return to yourself. Build what cannot be taken from you by one person's departure. And remember this when fear returns. You have survived days you once believed would destroy you. You have lived without people you once thought you could never lose. You have rebuilt after endings you did not choose. You have already proven that your life can continue after change. Trust that evidence. The next time someone threatens your peace with distance, do not immediately abandon yourself to close the gap. The next time someone makes you feel that you must beg to remain important, step back. The next time fear tells you that you cannot survive without them, remember everything you have already survived. You are not powerless. You are not incomplete. You are not one goodbye away from becoming nothing. You are still here. And as long as you are still here, you can rebuild. Stand alone until silence no longer scares you. Stand alone until you stop confusing attention with love. Stand alone until you remember what your own life feels like. Stand alone until your standards become stronger than your loneliness. Stand alone until the thought of someone leaving hurts, but no longer destroys your dignity. Then love again, but this time, love from strength. Choose people because they add something beautiful to your life, not because you believe you cannot live without them. Care deeply, be loyal, be present, but never disappear inside another person again. Because the strongest version of you is not the one who needs nobody. It is the one who knows that people can matter deeply without becoming the reason you exist. And when you finally understand that, something inside you becomes unbreakable. People may leave, life may change, chapters may end, but you will remain. And once you know how to remain, nobody can ever hold your entire life hostage with the threat of leaving again. In the end, the goal was never to become someone who needs nobody. The goal was to become someone who never loses themselves just because another person leaves. People will come into your life. Some will stay, some will change, some will disappoint you. Some will walk away without giving you the ending you hoped for, but your life must remain yours. Your peace must remain yours. Your identity must remain yours. Love people deeply, but do not hand them the power to decide whether you are whole. Care for them, but never abandon yourself to keep them. Let people come, let people go, and become so rooted in who you are that no goodbye can erase the person you fought so hard to become. Because the day you stop begging people to complete you is the day you finally understand the truth. You were never broken because someone left. You were only waiting to discover that you could stand without them. And once you learn how to stand alone without feeling empty, you become free to love without fear, leave without losing yourself, and live without placing your entire happiness in someone else's hands. That is where dependence ends. That is where freedom begins. And from this moment forward, never be afraid of who leaves. Be more afraid of losing yourself trying to make them stay.